What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today's conversation is with Dave Farrow. Dave is a two-time Guinness World Record holder in memory. He's also the author of the book Brain Hacker and the founder of Farrow Communications. This is a wide-ranging conversation. We start from the beginning when Dave had to overcome his own dyslexia and his own ADHD, which is how he got into brain hacks, if you will, to be able to improve his memory, because all of the experts at the time were telling him literally, you can't do it. He had threats to be sued and so on and so forth as he was trying to teach other people the brain hacks that he was using to improve his memory, to improve his ADHD, to improve his dyslexia, because the scientific community and doctors believe that it couldn't be done. But he proved them wrong. So we get into that. We get into the idea of experts and how to push back against them. We get into the political realm a little bit and why people buy into the idea of socialism. Also, taxation. He has a very creative idea on taxation, which I thought was very intriguing. What else do we talk about? We talk about his ideas on how to improve your sleep latency, which is essentially your ability to fall asleep. If you have a hard time falling asleep because your brain is sprinting in circles, Dave calls that hyperbrain. Your brain is thinking about all these ideas, things that you did before or things you want to do tomorrow, and he gives some tactics to overcome that. And then we also talk about how to improve focus. So this is a very wide-ranging conversation, one that I took a lot out of, and I know you will as well. So make sure that you share this with anybody else who's having trouble overcoming their own ADHD or dyslexia. Actually, a lot of entrepreneurs have ADHD. That's a big reason why a lot of entrepreneurs don't do well, especially in the beginning, is because they can't focus on the thing that they're trying to build. So this would be very helpful for any entrepreneur in your life. But nonetheless, make sure you share this with anybody that you know that's trying to overcome some of these issues, and get your own pen and paper out so that you can take notes and enjoy this conversation with Dave Farrow. All right, Dave, I'm curious about your how you started on this memory expansion journey that you've been on your adult life, because you started off as an ADHD dyslexic kid and
hmm
eventually figured out that you could influence that. How did you figure out you could influence the whole thing, or am I reading this wrong?
Well, no, you've got it. You've got it right, except it happened the other way around. I
Oh,
decided to influence it. I had this for some reason. I had this unwavering belief against all of the experts. By the way, now this is before I won't say how old I am, but this was before brain plasticity was common knowledge. This was when the theory of the brain was the hardwired brain. After puberty, your brain is set the way it is, and you can't do anything to change it. I had people with multiple letters after their name tell me that I was wrong and that there's no way I could change this or I could affect it. And I was just like, nope, I think I'm wrong. I'm right, and all the experts are wrong. And it turned out I was right, and all the experts were wrong. And not only that, but I went pretty public about it. I was doing the memory thing, and I came up with a new way to study, and it worked for a lot of other students. Decided to go for the Guinness record, and after I got it, I was put on tons of shows. I was on tons of TV shows and radio and everything, and that led to just a career for a couple decades of just media interviews, everything from being on the New York Times to the Today Show, and on all of it, I was talking about the power of the brain to change itself, and I had. I mean, something short of maybe death threats from neurologists and neuroscientists at the
wow.
time saying that I was being irresponsible, that
Right.
there's no way that I should be telling people that they can change their brain because the brain is hardwired and everything. This was, I mean, I actually talk about this in my book, Brain Hacker. This was very serious science. This is what they based a lot of the war on drugs and like the Clinton era of the 90s. The now I am dating myself. The very
I
like the
remember it all.
three
It's all
strikes
good.
rule. Yeah, but this was where for example, like Hillary Clinton got into trouble with this because she was involved with Bill in creating and drafting this law that once you're convicted of like three violent crimes, they basically lock you up and throw away the key. And we know that that's been used a lot against people of color, and that was one of the things that lost her, that demographic of the vote in 2016. So, you know, that all came from science, the accepted, 100% accepted, unanimous science of the time, that the brain was hardwired. And here I was, this kid going, nope, I think that's wrong, and I'm right. And it took a while to prove it, but I'm glad that history and science was actually on my side.
Well, there's a saying that progress depends on the unreasonable man. And so I'd say that it turned out to be right, as unreasonable as they were telling you that you were.
Yeah. Well, I would love to take credit for it, but I actually give credit to Christopher Reeve. I believe, if looking back, he's when everything changed. Most people know Christopher Reeve as he played Superman, but they don't remember actually what he did in his real life was miraculous. He was hit with a horrible spinal injury after a horse riding accident. But he did visualization exercises every day while he had volunteers move his limbs, and he was able to stimulate growth of his spinal cord to the point where he could wiggle his toes. And, some people made fun of that. Oh, he's only wiggling his toes. He's not exactly flying anymore. But that was 100% against the established science at the time. And it forced scientists, because it was so public, because he was a celebrity, it forced scientists to go back to the drawing board. And I don't think we would be talking about brain plasticity and how the brain changes itself and how positive thinking can help you. There's a whole realm of positive psychology now. I don't think any of that would have happened if it wasn't for Christopher Reeve just believing that he could overcome this. And if I played a small part in believing I could overcome ADD and got in the Guinness Book of Records, then that's great too.
That's cool. So is that what kind of inspired you to start, I don't know, trying to change your own brain?
Yeah, definitely. My background was more of like martial arts and health. I had a lot of health issues when I was a kid, and I learned very early on that changing my diet and exercise could change the levels of pain I was feeling and discomfort. I had chronic pain when I was just a baby. Actually, it led
Wow.
me all the way to my like 10 years old and around there where it started to dolly off a little bit. But a lot of it had to do with how I changed my lifestyle to deal with that. And I kind of, when I was diagnosed with this with the brain, I was just like, oh, this is no different from the body. I just have to, do certain exercises and I can overcome this. And all of them were like, no, no, you can't. That's not how it works. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to find out. But the other thing is that the type of person that decides to fight in that situation versus the type of person who gives up and listens to all the experts and accepts it verbatim and doesn't try to do anything, that I would rather be the type of person that tried and was wrong than the type of person that wouldn't try, you know?
Because otherwise, what are you going to do? Sit there and the
Yeah.
time's going to go by either way. So
Yeah.
is the time going to go by you just accepting your fate and it is what it is, or is the time going to
Yeah.
go by you trying to make things better?
Yeah, and even if you're wrong, if anybody's facing a situation like that where you're told you can't do something, and they might be right, there are things that are insurmountable. I'm not one of those positive thinkers that thinks, positive
Anything's
thinking solves
possible,
everything.
right?
Yeah, like it's still going to take a large rocket to get to Mars. Like there's certain physical limitations we have in this world, but if you're facing that, it is much more satisfying to be the person who at least has closure, knowing you tried everything and you tried your best and failed than if you didn't try. I really don't know how our obsession with trying to be perfect and not take chances has come into our culture, where so many people are just afraid to try. If I meet somebody who tried to do something really, really difficult and failed, I have so much respect for that person. I think anybody who's accomplished something does, you know?
For sure. My argument for that would be comfort.
Mm,
Because things are so comfortable that we just don't have a reason to try to do anything. We don't have a
right.
reason to try hard. So instead of trying and failing and looking dumb, we just try and perfect what we have. We perfect our physical look by putting on whatever clothes or makeup or things like that. We
Yeah.
bags that make us look good and cars that make us look good and things that make us look good. So
Well, going back to the dopamine hit, it's whatever gives us dopamine, right? So
for sure.
growing up, if you passed a test, or lifted weights and have muscle, or you have something that makes other people go ooh and ah, then you just do more of that because it gave you a dopamine hit. It's much easier to go back to something that gives you that dopamine hit than it is to go to something that is difficult and might embarrass you or something else. So, but the science actually says that the people who are most flexible, who are trying new things, even continually learning something, later on in life, 50 plus, and picking up new skills, those are the people that are lowest risk for Alzheimer's, who have the most flexible brains, who are healthier. So I think taking risks and being flexible and pushing ourselves out of that comfort zone should be part of our healthcare strategy, to be honest.
Oh, 100%. And I think I don't know if this is a leading characteristic of like successful people in general. Like I would say that it is, but definitely for entrepreneurships, it's curiosity. That's what you're talking about.
Mm.
Being curious, like, does this work? How does this work? I wonder if this will help something. I wonder if this will
Yeah.
improve sales. I wonder if this will improve my marketing. I wonder if this will get the person I'm looking for. I wonder if this will make my life better. It's just curiosity, really, is what it comes down to. But so what was it that what do you think led you to be so stubborn and hard-headed about trying, about wanting to get better? Like were you just like a early teen something or other and you're like, "Hey, I'm an early teen something or other and I'm just stubborn and hard-headed," because that's the way that I was at that age,
Yeah.
to be totally honest. Or was it something that was ingrained in you like throughout your childhood, like, "Hey, whenever you think of something, like stand up for it and try it."
I really don't know. I've had this interview question a lot, and I still don't have a very good answer. My best guess is that I had even before my diagnosis, I had chronic pain, and I had a lot of health problems when I was born, and there were a lot of experts that said I would die. I did die, and I was resuscitated even. So I guess I just was in the boat where I was used to experts being wrong, and you know I there is an interesting thing about the world of expertise, isn't there? That you spend so much time learning and understanding something. But if you're an expert for someone else, let's say for your taxes or something, right? You don't have a dog in the fight. It doesn't really benefit you if you do a good job on their taxes or you do a moderate job on their taxes. They're the ones who get the tax breaks, right? So there's this weird world of experts that you should listen to experts, but I think we should listen to experts so we can understand and learn ourselves. But just giving up your life to them, they don't have a vested, they don't have any consequences if they're wrong, right? So if you, and this goes right down to, trusting a contractor to install a sink. Like, I want to know how that thing gets installed, before I give the okay, so I can understand it. Because just giving a blank check to somebody and letting them do it, they could be the best in the world at something, but that doesn't mean they have your interests at heart, you know?
Well, I think it also goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier about not looking, I don't know if we were talking about specifically not looking stupid, but being comfortable with things. Like
Yeah.
a doctor's, like an expert is really trying to not look stupid, is what they're trying to do. And the best way to do that is to
Or,
kind
or
of
the, or
follow.
the grown-up version of that, which is to not get into a lawsuit too, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot to cover your
100%.
ass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But on both ends, it's kind of the same. Like the expert's trying not to look stupid, and the
Mm.
person who's listening to the expert is trying not to look stupid. So the expert stays on the same path as everybody else that's in their expertise. And then
Yeah.
society stays on the same path of listening to these people because they don't want to be the person that steps out, doesn't listen, and then falls flat on their face.
Yeah, you're right. I do think that our obsession with blame as a culture is holding back a lot of people,
Mm,
too. It's like, we have to, like, I don't, what does it matter to me that it's someone else's fault that I lose money? I lost money. I only care about the money. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Does it matter to me if it's my fault or somebody else's fault that I, gained a few pounds or lost a few pounds? I care about how many pounds I have. Like, I don't understand how everyone is so obsessed with whose fault something is, rather than where the ball actually falls. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've found in very successful people is now don't get me wrong, if somebody screws up and they're their employee, they'll fire them. Like, there's still like good, better, best, but they're not so obsessed with whose fault or whose win something is. They're obsessed with the results,
That's
whether or
right.
not
Right.
the deal is done, whether or not profit is made, and not so much as long as you understand how it was done and it wasn't just magical, like you can repeat the process. I'm very happy to give my team props. I'm very happy to make a mistake if it gets us close and admit to my mistakes if it gets us closer to the goal. And I think the goal is the only thing that matters. But like you said, so many people are worried about looking dumb. And it's like once you get past that, once you shake yourself of that, just focus on the results. It may have been too results oriented for my own good, but it definitely served me back then when I was diagnosed because I was if I was worried about how I looked, I would have never tried to be in a Guinness record. I would have never tried even learning memory techniques and everything and teaching them. And I would have never tried half the stuff that I've done if I was afraid of being embarrassed or being wrong. It just didn't cross my mind, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think that goes back to responsibility and just not
Yeah.
wanting to look dumb. Like people don't like taking responsibility. And so the easy thing is just to find somebody else to point the finger at and find somebody else to blame along the way so that, again, you don't have to be the one that looks stupid. And to be totally honest, it's human nature to not want to, you want people to have good. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for instance,
Mm.
like at the bottom, it's not the bottom rung, but I think it's the second rung. It's just people having good esteem for you, like people thinking
Mm.
highly of you. And so the easiest way to do that, first, is to follow the crowd, and then it's to blame everything else that you're a failure. Like, like that's,
But
I'm
as you get older, the people you admire the most are the ones who went against the crowd and were right. I mean, obviously, going against the crowd
ironically,
and being wrong is the risk you take. But I mean, as I get older, I care less and less what people think of me too. You know, that's kind of that's something you shake off as a kid. I hope, right?
well, and then the ultimate irony is on our deathbeds, the thing that we regret most is not taking more risk.
Yeah,
So, you
very
know,
true.
if that's a lesson to be learned, then go ahead and start doing that now while you can. And I would argue, going back to your results oriented, you saying that you're too results oriented, that's kind of the point. Like that's the thing is results, merit. Like how did you do? How did things work? How did things move forward? So I guess you could be too results oriented, but I don't know, I'd be hard pressed to actually be convinced that that's a really bad thing. So at any rate, when
Well,
did you
I mean, the
start?
other thing that also saved me back then, if I'm going to be completely honest, is that I didn't have much farther to fall. I didn't have anything to lose, So like I was at the bottom of a lot of my classes. I definitely wasn't considered a brain, so I didn't really have a lot to lose. I was already like kind of looked down upon. And finally, after the diagnosis, I figured out why. I mean, why reading was such a struggle, and then I realized I was dyslexic. Then understanding dyslexia, learning about it, and then how to adapt to it. Now I'm a speed reader, but it took that process. But yeah, there is something to be said for not having much to lose and being young and it doesn't taking risks, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Again, a saying that I think about is, it's the guy who doesn't have anything to lose that's the most dangerous,
Yep.
both in a good way and a bad way. But he's the most dangerous because what you got to lose? Well, all
Yeah.
right, let's go try it.
Yeah, they'll surprise you.
So what were some of the things that you did find? You mentioned your reading and dyslexia and why you struggled and how you started to figure out ways to overcome that. What are some of the things that you did find that started to help you?
Yeah, so the first brain hack that moved the needle for me was such a simple one that it kind of convinced me that there was this whole world of understanding the brain. So when I went into it, every book, every course, every expert was saying, we don't understand the brain, we don't understand it. There's no manual for the brain, right? And I said, well, I mean, maybe there's clues, maybe there's hints. So I learned this one hack of just looking up. And anytime that you're forgetful, take a moment and look up. And the reason why you have to force yourself to look up is because most of the time when we're forgetful, we're looking down. And try this sometime. Try it when somebody's forgetful. What are they doing? Like, oh, where's my keys? Or what did I do? And I'm a Guinness record holder for memory. I forget things all the time. This is my strategy to do when I do forget something. This is a human thing. So when you're looking down, that is helping your brain access your verbal centers. That's kind of calming yourself down, talking to yourself. It's a self-soothing exercise. And when you look up, for some reason, it puts us in touch with our memory centers and our prefrontal cortex and basically our higher brain functioning. It makes it easier to think that. And genetic anthropologists and others, neuroscientists, think this has something to do with blocking out distractions. Like if you look up, I'm not looking at anything in front of me. Therefore, over time, your brain became wired to do this. But what we do know is much more energy goes to the memory centers of the brain, and it'll improve your memory by about 25, 30%, according to studies. And that's huge. So if you're blanking out completely, take a deep breath and look up. And that changed how I did test taking. And all of a sudden, I started scoring better on tests. And I was like, holy crap, this one little thing. I tell my friends and everything, right? And this one little thing made such a huge difference, because when you're in the test, you're forced to look down, right? And keep your eyes on your page, Mr. Farrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So looking up was a game changer. And some people are much more susceptible to this than others. For me, it was a huge difference. It felt like 80% difference to me. So clearly I had some sort of mental block that I was doing. But once I figured out that, I was like, okay, let's see how far this can go down. And I started learning, hack after hack about how the brain works. Little things led to big things, and then combined together into a whole hack to overcome my ADD.
That's interesting. I almost visualize it as like looking up and like looking at your prefrontal cortex and like telling it to turn on.
Yeah,
That's kind of
and
how
it
I.
is actually based on the optic nerve. That's like a big bundle of nerves
Mhm,
behind the eyeball.
mhm.
A lot of people don't realize this. And if you look at a brain, right, like a drawing of a brain, it kind of starts here and then goes back. Well, what's right here? It's a giant bundle of nerves that's like twice, three times the size of your eyeball. That's right behind your eyeball. And yeah, things crisscross. Everything on the left-hand side goes to the right brain. Everything on the right-hand side goes to the left brain, that sort of thing. So when you're looking up, that does send energy to the top part of your brain for some reason.
That's super cool. I will definitely be trying that next time I forget anything.
I did it live on the air. I was with Steve Harvey, and
Oh yeah.
and his people went up to me to play a prank on him, and I got to play a prank on Mr. Family Feud. So he had me on there, and they rushed me through, and like normal TV stuff, we did this whole interview and stuff, and then right in the middle of the interview, I said, "And Steve, what's my name?" And they blocked off all the monitors, like they were. They knew who did it. And then but I told him the whole looking up thing. So he made a comical thing about like trying to look up,
Yeah,
and then he remembered it. So it
that's
was like
funny.
it actually worked live on the air. It was kind of cool.
That's funny. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So at what point did you start to, I'll say, take advantage of your mastery of the mind? Like you started accumulating these, I'll call them superpowers, which
Yep.
especially in today's day and age, I would call them superpowers because just
Oh, sure.
the ability to remember or focus on anything is a superpower today, which we'll get to in a little bit. But nonetheless, at what point did you start to like, hey, I think I can do something with this?
Um, I well, actually, it's a funny story. I was at the bottom of all my classes, but I started using memory techniques, and the tests that were purely memory were very easy to ace. So things like I was born in Canada, so vocabulary for French was a big deal, and I memorized a bunch of French vocabulary. My French teacher was really impressed. And then we were doing this class that is stupid by today's standards. It was a computer class, and we had to memorize a bunch of key combinations. It was like Shift F6 meant to print. This was before this sort of software we have. Like it's completely useless, right? But it was like, okay, if you get like 30% on this test, I'll be impressed. Just memorize a few key combinations, and then we'll test you like on Friday. I'm like, you know what? This is like just pure memory. I'm going to give it a shot with these memory techniques. And I made a bunch of links, and I remembered all of them. I got 100% on the test. And then the teacher gave me a zero, and I was like, what's going on, right? And as you can imagine, this is what he thought happened is he
Yeah.
thought I cheated. And he said, because it's impossible for any person to score 100% on this test. And I didn't fight it. I was like, I did the impossible. Like I walked back thinking that like an idiot.
Yeah.
I should have stopped and I said, okay, test me. And I would have been able to recite them all verbatim. I would have loved to like be able to say that I did
Shown them. Yeah.
that thing, but I wasn't that smart. I walked back like an idiot going, I did the impossible. Awesome.
Yeah. That's too
But
funny.
after that, I was kind of hooked. I did have one teacher that still, like, for about a year and a half, was convinced that I was cheating somehow, and I kept on getting detentions, and all my tests I had to do again and again and again, and I had to take my shoes off because I was doing so well. Like, you have to understand, the teachers don't know how to handle that. Like, they
Hmm.
really don't. They're so used to a kid being categorized like, oh, you struggle at this, you do well, and if I can improve you maybe 10 to 15%, then I think I'm a good teacher. I went from like 30% on tests to 99 and 100 overnight. I went from the bottom student to the best student, like that. And so of course they thought I was cheating. And it was hilarious because I would do the test again in the detention, and they'd eventually have to accept the answers, and it took like a year before it actually took to the point where I was teaching classes in my high school on memory techniques at lunch hour. The debating club turned into a memory club because they were all interested in learning this stuff, and the class was growing and growing and growing. And I'm like, wow, I'd like to do this for a living, and that's basically where I got the idea to teach this outside of that school and do this as a professional.
That's pretty funny. I could see that happening though, for sure, because like you said, you're so used to small changes,
Yep.
just, a little insignificant, insignificant to a degree changes whenever you are a teacher's dealing with ADHD, dyslexic, or
Yeah.
any kind of, developmental whatever. I'm sure they're just used to I have an expectation for this person, and they
Oh,
generally
wow.
fulfill that expectation.
Yep.
So I can only imagine how baffled they were whenever they came across you.
Teacher bias is a big thing.
It's real. It
Yeah,
hurts
there's
many,
psychology
many
texts.
kids. It hurts a lot of
Yeah.
kids.
It's surprising because teachers will tell you that they're not biased, but there was this great study. This was to go back to the 70s, but it was like the bluebird redbird study. It was like the teacher, you know, young kids, like kids learning how to read. They were broken up into these bluebird, redbird, greenbird, I think, bird categories. And the teacher was told that the red birds were the best readers and the bluebirds were the medium readers and the green birds were the lowest readers, something like that. And then what the educators did is they just swapped them randomly. And they found that the ones who were the best readers actually started performing lower and worse because the teacher expected them to perform worse. The ones that were the worst, but the teacher was told that they were the best, they started performing so much better because the teacher expected them to perform better. So your expectations have a very real effect. Positive psychology is a very real thing. It's not just like wishful thinking.
For sure. I would say that's kind of human nature. I would think like if I like to think in things like historically, why would we develop that? Like
Mm,
to focus on somebody who could do well. So as a tribe, I would imagine this was developed because as a tribe, you'd want to focus on the person, like you'd want to save the person or protect the person that is the strongest or the smartest, and they're able to find food the best and so on and so forth. So I would imagine
yeah.
like you would protect that person more than you would protect someone who they're not able to do and hold up their part of the tribe as much. That's
I think it's also if you're talking about hierarchies and
yeah.
studying hierarchy from a an anthropological perspective is
Mm,
a really fascinating field of study. And I won't pretend I'm an expert, but what I think, if you're asking, what I think the what's going on is that hierarchies that are disrupted end up having very bad group dynamics.
mm,
So think of a person you grew up with, and this is the crab bucket situation where one person does really well, they're an entrepreneur and they strike it rich, and all of a sudden all of their friends, they leave all their friends, they go to a different neighborhood, right? But if you talk to the person who struck it rich, like if you talk to someone like an Eminem or someone who's like became a rap star or something, from their perspective, all of their friends kind of turned on them and became really mean. right? Because they weren't happy for them. They were trying to bring them down. And I experienced that as well. That sort of the crab bucket, for those of you who don't know, is if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, as if one crab tries to crawl out, the other crabs will pull them down because I think hierarchy, a system, and inside that bucket is a hierarchy. That hierarchy remains stable as long as everyone stays in their position. And once you say, "Hey, I'm down here, but I want to move up there," that disrupts the whole hierarchy. And if you're a small village, as human beings have been for you know
Most,
250 to
yep.
half a million years, right?
Mm,
Then that would really disrupt that village. Not, people, worker bees are the best, for a small village. So the
yeah.
disruptive people are not that great. But if we live in a capitalist society where innovation and risk taking are rewarded, then that person who is disrupting that little village could go on to contribute so much to their country and their world. So I think that's what you're talking about. Is all throughout history you see a whole bunch of mechanisms put in place to keep the disruptors down. The creative people, not necessarily the smart ones or the bad ones or the dumb ones, but just those who want to zig when everyone else zags. We have so many systems in place to try to make everybody conform. And it does go back to our evolution for sure.
Well, and I think that that's why the idea of uh, equal outcome is so intriguing to people, like socialism, essentially. I think that's why it's so intriguing to people
Yeah.
because it basically does that. It balances the playing field, and then everyone feels like they're the same. Like everyone feels equal, and the ones that aren't able to take those steps and make those strides and actually make it out of the bucket, even though they're getting grabbed on the whole time, even though people are trying to drag them down the whole time, the people who are actually able to climb out of the bucket. If you're not able to do that, then you don't feel bad about it, and then you're like,
Yeah.
hey, we're all the same now. Like we all have the same means and the same outcomes, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that the best psychological aspect of that, we're getting into a lot of cool areas, but the best psychological aspect I can think of that is the mental thing that goes through your mind when you're in a traffic jam and you're sitting in one lane that's not moving and the lane beside you starts moving,
Mm,
right? You're not thinking about how long it takes to get to your destination. You're just thinking that bastard's in front of me,
mm.
right? And I think that's socialism. I think or at least the emotional desire for a perfect socialist world where everyone is equal. But if you look on a timeline, I referred to this once as the temporal haves and have-nots. All the have-nots are in our past because as long as you have innovators and disruptors, then year after year after year, life gets better for everyone. And I would love somebody to challenge me on this. The UN has great data on how in the last 20 years extreme poverty has been cut in half around the world, and now I think it was cut in half again in the last 5 years, even with COVID and everything else. And that's been because of investment, education, access to infrastructure, and all of that comes from people who are trying to make a buck and trying to get ahead. All those crabs that are trying to crawl out of the bucket, they go to some other bucket and lift them up. And that so when we look around and go, I want everyone to be equal, you're right. It's a very limited view and it doesn't take into account. I mean, anybody living today, you would never trade a day of your life for a week in like the 1960s or something. Like you think you would, but like go there. You don't have an app on your phone. You don't have directions. You can't drive around easily. You can't, like there's I don't know about driving around, but like we think that life is getting worse and worse and worse, but in every single situation you're doing better and better and better and better. Like I remember my mom telling me when they were growing up, it was this amazing thing when they got a refrigerator, right? And like you look at the data, most people got refrigerators in the 70s. They had ice boxes in the 60s. Like we look back with this great nostalgia, but imagine what life would be like without a refrigerator,
Oh yeah,
like things
for
like
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's especially hard to appreciate for anybody who was born after probably the year 2000,
yeah,
because at that point, you definitely have no clue what it was like to not have phones and not have
Yeah.
the internet and not have things like that. Not to have to sit and go, all right, let me dial into the internet real quick. Like,
And more than that, I mean, access to information
yeah, oh yeah. Hmm.
and just like the fact that you can learn things and
Yeah.
software has changed things. I mean,
Yeah.
everything we complain about, man, it was so much tougher
Yeah.
back then. And I got mad respect for the people back then, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and I think going back to why it's such an intriguing idea now, like the idea of socialism is now, is also connected with another idea we already talked about, is because things are so comfortable. It's like can easily be sold the idea of everybody being the same. Because if it's like, hey, if I get to continue this level of comfort and I get some sort of regular income given to me and everyone else is the same and I don't have to worry about competing and I'm always going to
Yeah.
stay in the same, then it's easy. But that is also comes with the assumption that that's the way it's actually going to be, meaning whenever you have and this is kind of getting into another field,
Yeah,
but
I didn't
it's
know this was an anti-socialist podcast, but I'm
oh,
down for it. I'm
it,
with you here. I
it,
love it. I didn't know
just
this
kind
was
of
gonna,
turn into it.
yeah, there you go. We're gonna debate one of them or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
No, but listen, I totally get what you're saying. I think that there's two people in that camp though. I would say there's
yeah.
one that I respect and one that I don't respect. You got
Hmm.
the one that I don't respect will be the ones who believe in some sort of they think that they can reshape society better than it already is, and they have the arrogance to believe that their ideas are somehow going to solve all the world's problems and oh just put me in charge. And there have been just strings of tyrants that have thought
Even
the
though
same.
yeah, I was going to say, even though it's
And
all been done before.
it's all been done before, and it's all been disastrous.
Hmm.
Anytime somebody has thought like has been the world, there more people have been hurt by idealism than malevolence. But there are others that I think are a bit more human that I have more compassion for. Intellectually, I might disagree, but anybody who looks at somebody who's struggling financially and doesn't emotionally relate to that or empathize to that, I think that's wrong. I mean, I think that living in a society where you still have to work your ass off just to pay the bills, where things get more and more expensive year after year. Yeah, I mean, I can totally understand the appeal and the desire for it. It's almost a desire for kind of a religion, not so much
True.
reality.
Yep.
Reality does work
True.
where so I like to believe in charity. I like to believe that, and every person who I've met, I've been honored enough to meet some very wealthy people and some people who started great charities. One of my closest friends before he passed was Frank Shankwitz. He founded and created the Make a Wish Foundation, and he opened my eyes. He's very right wing Republican and pro Trump, by the way. He was, and also one of the greatest human beings and a living saint. The closest thing I could ever see to a living saint. He created Make a Wish, and he never took a dime from it. He created this
Hmm.
whole organization. So, he showed me how, like in an ideal world, there would be the haves and the have-nots, and then after you get a little older and you have a bunch, you look at the have-nots and go, I got to help them, and that's where charity comes in. And I would say that to everybody who wants to judge those who are better off and wants to bring them down a peg, try looking at someone who's worse off than you and bringing them up a peg first,
Hmm.
and let's get less destructive and more constructive. And I put my money where my mouth is when it comes to that as well. And I won't go into further depth about it, but I give to charity, and I'm trying to make the world a better place in my own way, with my own ideas and my own values. And I think everybody should.
That is very, very well put, by the way. And I would, just to reinforce that idea, I do believe also that it is once you reach a level, and I don't think that level is defined necessarily, but once you reach a level that I'd say it's your responsibility to then start to help people. Now, responsibility goes a lot of different, how do you take responsibility for somebody else? I don't believe you can take responsibility for somebody else, but if you can figure out a way to, like you said, to raise the ones that are below you, and once you reach a sort of certain level, a lot of people are, quote, below you. So you can do a lot of things to be able to start to pull society and pull other people up. So,
Mhm.
I that goes back to the incentives of the system. and how do you change the incentives of the system to encourage that more? And I don't think that that's super hard. I think there's plenty that can be done, and a lot of that is there, tax write-offs and so on and so forth, to be able to, help with, uh, to help people want to give charitably. But no, I totally agree with that for sure.
I think also helping with your work too. Um, yeah, I think that it's important that what you do, like I think there's two ways to make money in the world. There's the creative and competitive. I get that from Wallace Wattles' book, Science of Getting Rich.
Hmm.
And on the competitive plane, that's like the stock market, gambling, a lot of things like that. Crypto was like this, where somebody, in order for you to make money, somebody else has to lose money. Right now, don't get me wrong. I know someone's going to say, "Oh, the stock market goes up, so everybody gains," and yada yada. But like, there's people losing. Where what really fires me up is the idea of creating something, and then obviously you can sell it, and you can make money, but you also created something. You
Mhm.
you brought something of value into the world,
You're making the
right?
pie bigger instead of taking a slice of the pie.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that should be our focus. I honestly think we should have, I mean, if you want to get into like how to change the world, I mean, my theory is we should have kind of two types of taxes. And we kind of have this with income tax versus capital gains, but I think we should split it up versus creative versus competitive. I think we can
Hmm.
split it up by industry, by endeavor. If you're creating something and adding to the world, and I mean, you're part of a company that does that or whatever. But if you're in something where there's like a zero sum game where in order for you to gain and others have to lose, I would tax that more. Which would mean kind of on the kind of the opposite of what we're doing now, where capital gains, at least in like stock market or something like that, might be
Mhm.
taxed more, but capital gains on maybe a property over time, if the property has gone up in value and you've improved the property, maybe that would be less.
Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
think, but I just think it's a moral thing that how you choose to spend your time, how you choose to spend your money is the idea is you're exchanging it for your time and effort, and the exchange should benefit them as well as you. Otherwise, don't do it. There's a lot
Hmm.
of ways to make money in this world, that is, I think, the only moral compass I would have for making money. I'm open to making money through any means, anything, any taboo means, whatever. But what's really taboo to me is that you have to screw somebody out of their money in order for you to make money. That I would never want to do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's very intriguing. And I'll have to put some thought into that. I like the idea because, like you said, then the incentive shifts to creating things instead of give and take.
Just profiting off things. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of give and take. And I think
Yeah.
that so much of business now is labeled, like I think a lot of business is labeled as just give and take.
Yeah.
Especially
True.
by a lot of people in government are just saying, hey, these people are just taking your money and taking your money, where that's not the case for a lot of businesses. Certainly for a number of businesses, that is, depending on the industry and the sector. But for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of businesses, it's just simply not the case. They're literally expanding your life in some way, shape, or form by
Yeah.
by being there and taking your money, no matter how you want to look at it.
And even right down to, the person who has an Etsy store who crochets something and sells
Mhm.
it. I wouldn't want them to pay a dime of tax, but I don't mind taxing somebody who's taking, a management fee for a hedge fund or something,
Yeah, yeah.
like
Mhm.
not actually creating something.
Mm.
That's kind of my thinking. I want the artists to win. I think they create the next thing that we enjoy for the next generation.
Mm. Interesting. Well, that was a nice little side road we just went down.
Yeah,
Let's
we're
see if we
talking
can
about
come.
society, solving all of society's problems,
We got it
punishing
figured
the
out.
socialists. Yeah, we got it all figured out. There we go.
We solved the world's problems in 45
Yeah.
minutes. Done.
We just got to trade a doobie back and forth, and we'd be set.
That's next. It's a little challenging through this
There we go.
lens, but we'll
There we
figure it out. So tell me about this idea of hyperbrain, I think is what you call it.
Yeah, Hyperbrain. I did a YouTube video on that recently. It's something that I realized, especially later in life, I have a lot of. And so some people might feel good about this, that it strikes you, generally speaking, it strikes people with a higher IQ. But what it is late at night when you're trying to fall asleep, if you have some thoughts that nag at you, and something basically gets triggered that triggers your adrenal glands. That appears to be what goes on in the brain and the body. Then you go from slightly tired to wide awake and unable to sleep, and your brain is just going, and you can't stop thinking about ideas. The best strategy I found for this, and I do get this, this hits me quite a bit. The best strategy I found is I don't lie in bed, literally get up and journal, get your ideas out, get your thoughts out, and then when you're done that, try going back to lie down in bed. There's a whole bunch of studies and data on this that insomnia only gets worse if you just lie there trying to sleep, because by trying to sleep, you're actually feeding the hyperbrain, and your brain will keep on thinking of how to sleep, and you'll go from counting sheep to thinking of your budget to figuring out the lineup of a hypothetical, Marvel movie or something. Who knows? Like your brain just keeps on going. But if you get up physically and get those thoughts out of your head, then you can go back to sleep. So hyperbrain strikes the creative people a lot, and I believe it's a blessing and a curse, but it does hit like that late at night hour, just around 11 o'clock, midnight. Yeah, I've struggled with it a lot. I'm a Guinness record holder, great memory, I have great skills, but all that I have is just I have tactics and strategies to implement when my brain just hijacks me and does what it wants to do. So,
That's great. And I can empathize with that as well. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this are entrepreneurs. I'm sure they can all, because being an entrepreneur is being creative. Like you have to come
yeah,
up with creative ideas to problem solve. That's what it really comes down to. And so,
yeah. And
so
there's a bit of a fight or flight aspect to hyperbrain as well.
mhm.
But our fight or flight mechanism is so screwed up in modern society because you have to pay the rent at the end of the month, uh, and that is treated in your brain. It's treated like you're being chased by this tiger. It's going to eat you on the first, and that's not what's actually happening. But that's the only metaphor that your brain can really latch onto, is like a predator prey situation. So it treats you like that, and it won't let you sleep as long as you feel like there's danger, and that danger could be a week away. Time doesn't really matter in that sense. So that's, if you do have like worries like that, that's something that will really ruin your sleep and really will ruin your life. And again, journaling seems to be one of the best brain hacks for it. There are a few others, but that seems to be one of the best ones.
Yeah, and it's and maybe you hit on it, but your brain's scared to let it go, or you're scared to forget it, and that's part of what's keeping you awake. And so if you get it out of your brain and you get it on a piece of paper, then it's out of your brain and on a piece of paper. So you your mind knows that it's safe somewhere. Your mind knows that
Yeah.
now it's not going to be lost overnight.
Yeah, that's basically it. Is that's why you go over and over and over things, because you're afraid that, oh, in the morning I won't think of this, in the morning I won't think of this, and then so when you make a note to yourself, there's some tricks. You can make a note on your phone or set an alarm or something like that. I've done that before as well. But what you have to do is you have to take all that information that you're afraid of, and you need to tell your future self, hey, watch out for this. I'm going to go to bed. And that's literally what's going on. And if you can do that successfully and just like let it go, then your brain realizes that, oh, there's nothing else I can do now. I've already set the warning. So now I'll shut off the alarms and I'll go to bed. And also hyperbrain can be very creative. I've come up with some of my best ideas, and it's just brilliant thoughts, brilliant to me, at least.
That's all that matters.
Ideas, no, I mean ideas
Unless
for
you're
my
trying to make
book and
money on
things,
them.
things that meant a lot to me is what I'm
Sure.
trying to say.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't mean
Mhm.
that, oh, I'm all brilliant.
Yeah.
No, but like
Mhm.
I'd be working on something in my book, and I'm, oh, how am I going to say this chapter and everything, and then that idea would hit me, and I'd have a little hyperbrain moment and journal it all down. And it can be one of your greatest creative times, especially if you have something artistic that you're trying to accomplish. But at the same time, trying to hold it in or trying to fight it, you'll only feed the beast.
For sure. So I know you recently released Brain Hacker. You got it sitting right behind you.
Yep.
And one of the focuses in the book is focus.
Yep. Let me grab a copy here.
And so, uh, like I hit on earlier, I believe very nice, very nice, good looking book. I like the
There we
brain
go.
cover. That's the brain's cool looking, like a neon sign kind of
Yep.
thing.
It's all glowy. I love
Yeah,
it.
very cool. So focus, I believe, is a superpower today, because the world just has no clue how to do it anymore. And a lot of people are just saying, I'm just getting older, and so I'm losing my ability to focus. I would argue that it is certainly that plays a part in it, but I would argue it's a lot different than that. So, what are your thoughts on why focus is deteriorating so much?
Your habits will do more for your ability to focus and pay attention than anything else, even ADD. And the habits that you form, uh, it comes down to like how much are you doom scrolling, scrolling through videos. How much are you, choosing to read a book and dive into it all from the beginning all the way to the end to get that dopamine rush that comes from a longer dive into something. Really, focus is. I think actually all of these mental issues. We have a site that we're working on. We're going to create a community called Brain Hackers. So it's at brainhackers.com. And one of my I have a kind of a mission statement on there, and basically the idea is that most of our modern ailments are coming from the difference between the natural world and this modern world that we're trying to adapt to. So insomnia is really triggered by extra lights, right? Artificial light. How much of that stress response is due to the fact that we don't have natural predators anymore, and our stress response has gone all kind of haywire because we have unnatural predators, things like the utility bill that we have to pay, and somebody who doesn't like us on social media. And social media twists our dopamine around. Working for 8 hours a day in a cubicle kind of screws with our heads as well. So all of these things come back to the fact that there's a reason why the sound of rain helps us sleep. Why most people, the background of their computer is a beautiful sunny day or a beach or something. We are natural creatures in an unnatural world. And my belief is that the only way we can get past it is to adapt, and we have to adapt our brain. So the brain is very powerful. It's very good at adapting, but we just have to understand it first. So one of the things that I do with focus techniques is to admit that we are going to have things like, we want to watch a TikTok video once in a while. We want to do these things that are very easy dopamine hits. So how do we mix that in? And one of the things I came up with was focus bursts. It's FB for short. But basically, what I realized was that focus was a positive form of the fight or flight response. So people talk about flow as well, and transcendence that can be achieved through meditation. And one of the strategies that I was able to get there with was basically using a timer, much like a boxer, and going with a round of work and contrasting that with a round of play. So I realized early on that as an ADD kid, I couldn't focus for more than, say, like 2 minutes, right? But I could focus really intensely for 2 minutes if I wanted to. So I thought, okay, I will. And I was into martial arts at the time and boxing and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll do a little round. I had this timer thing that would turn off and on, and it would give me a round that was 2 minutes long for working out and a round that was 2 minutes long for resting. And I thought, what if I do that with my brain? What if I do a round of really intense mental activity like memorizing cards or one of my memory techniques, and contrast that with a round of just reading a book that I really enjoy, or today it would be watching a YouTube video or something. And the results were life-changing. And it actually led to an entire university study and a double-blind neuroscience study at McGill University to test the theory. And it's something that I even teach my son to this day. What I really discovered was that the brain does not like to kind of warm up and work at a peak level for a long period of time and then kind of drop down. It just doesn't do that because of our brain chemistry. What it is very good at, though, is working at a high peak level for a very short time. And the reason for that is predators and prey again. That fight or flight response, we have to be as smart as humanly possible in order to beat that tiger or run away from the tiger or something, whatever our fight or flight response was, that's what helped us survive. And that's what your brain treats most activity like. Is it a danger or is it leisure? And if you're trying to operate at a very high level, you have to basically put yourself in the mindset of that fight or flight response, but in a pleasurable, positive sort of way. So you're not triggering your adrenal glands, you're not triggering anxiety, but you are triggering this intense focus. But again, you can't keep it up for very long. We're looking at, according to my research, 5 to 7 minutes seems to be the peak that you can stay in this incredibly focused state. And if you've ever had that where you waited to the last minute, right, to hand in that paper or to work on your homework, but at that last minute though, your brain kicks in and you got a good 10 minutes of, oh, I got this idea, and then your brain runs out of juice, right? And quite literally, it is juice because it's the hormones, it's the chemistry in your brain. Without getting too into it, basically the good hormones are replaced by the bad hormones. Like, cortisol replaces, norepinephrine and dopamine. So we have a situation where your brain really, really likes to have those moments of intensity, but you almost need an external stimulus like a deadline to hit it. So I thought, well, what if I create my own deadline? So I was able to get hundreds of students actually to do this for studying, where we would have a peak focus of about 5 minutes of focus and then 5 minutes of break and 5 minutes of focus and 5 minutes of a break for studying. And we did study groups in universities. And it was absolutely amazing because they found also that they could do this on their own because it beat their procrastination. It's really easy to convince yourself to work for 5 minutes, right? You're gonna be the laziest person. If you can't work on your project for 5 minutes, you don't like that project, okay? So it was really easy to do the 5 minutes. Then you get that 5 minute break. We had people like pausing video games and going back to them. Obviously it's not like Fortnite or something that has other people playing, but something you can pause. And the other results were very powerful. Basically, people were operating at 95% of their recall rate, of their focus rate, of their problem solving ability. And the cool thing is it trained the brain to handle the test taking environment. Because even though a test lasts longer than 5 minutes, it trains you to switch on that focus and, okay, now I'm in, now I'm focused, now I'm doing this. And it was very powerful. So I think to this day it's one of the most powerful techniques I invented, is that focus burst technique. And I do it with my son, even to this day when he's struggling with one of his assignments. I say, okay, let's do focus bursts. You can watch your anime in between, and he watches anime, then he goes back to his work, watches the anime, goes back to the work, and then you see assignment after assignment. It's just churning through it and getting it all done. And the cool thing is you're not tired at the end of it. You're not exhausted because you haven't pushed that brain chemistry past its limits to the point where you're like putty on the floor trying to pick yourself up.
That's intriguing. So I've never heard about the shorter duration like that. I'm a bit of a productivity geek. So like I've
Yeah,
read about the Pomodoro technique and so on and so forth.
yeah,
25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, something to that effect. I've pretty much done that or some variation of that religiously for
yeah,
years now at this point. But certainly, and I can tell just anecdotally, even for 25 minutes, like it's wavering. It's a wavering
yeah,
25 minutes. Like
yeah.
I can sit there and I can be on the thing and do like if it's writing an article
Yeah,
or
you get it. You're following. I think Pomodoro is. I only learned about Pomodoro much later in life, so it was after I created this technique. And for a long time, people used my technique as just a way to treat ADHD people. But I sold 100,000 copies of my courses and did very well that way. And I do know that there's a lot of authors that used my systems, so it got into a lot of the literature. But now, actually, I'm planning on coming up with a new online course that covers this, that goes into how to get into that focus state, how to get into that mindset, and a bunch of other cool stuff like mental toughness and things like that.
very good. Dave, man, I appreciate everything. I appreciate your wisdom in all of this. That last little bit was super intriguing. I'm gonna be giving that 5 minute burst a try here now moving forward. Like I said,
Well, it's all in the book though, so
yeah,
get Brain Hacker and it goes in depth on all the exercises to get there. And it's actually one of the secrets that I got in my Guinness Book of Records. I did
Nice.
it like one focus burst at a time so I could make sure deck number 52 I had recalled just as clearly and just as accurately as deck number 2. So
Nice.
that's the secret.
Very good. Dave, man, I appreciate your time. This time flew by because I think we hit on like
Oh.
25 different topics throughout this whole conversation. But no, I appreciate it, man. This was great. So, where can people find everything that you're talking about?
Well, I think you've got some links for people, but Brain Hacker is available on Amazon. And we didn't even get into kind of my current career, but for the last 10 years, I have a PR firm that I founded. So anybody who's an author or business owner that is looking for a marketing firm, that's kind of part of my day to day. And our courses are available at farrowmemory.com as well. But pick up Brain Hacker. It'll be a really good start for you, and check out brainhackers.com. If you sign up there, you're going to be on a waiting list and get a bunch of special goodies for when we launch the new site.
Very nice. Yeah, and I'll make sure I put all that in the description. Dave, thanks so much, brother. I appreciate your time.